Hey y'all, Amy Hillman here. Hey Doc Taylor, thank you for letting me do the video. I won't be in class. Well, if I am, it's from the airport. So thank you for letting me do this. And here's my work. The quote that moved me from Spring's work was found on page 128 and was based on the removal of indigenous peoples that were east of the Mississippi and moved them to the west of Mississippi, today's Oklahoma. Of course, we're talking about the Trail of Tears. The Cherokee Nation did not follow the invitation, therefore, they faced civil forces from the U.S. Army led by General Winfield Scott. Now that is the name, the guy who penned the work that I'm going to talk about today. The quote from Spring's work was from a volunteer from Georgia who later served as a colonel in the Confederate Army. He wrote, quote, I fought through the Civil War and have seen men shot in pieces and slaughtered by thousands. But the Cherokee removal was the cruelest I ever knew. Now some background and a basic summary. I did this just a little bit for me, but just to give some background to that, the Indian Removal Act of 1830. It was signed by President Andrew Jackson, not my favorite human ever, that authorized the forced removal of Native American tribes from their ancestral lands in the southeastern United States. To lands west of the Mississippi River. The act was intended to open up land for white settlement and to provide a solution to what was perceived as the Indian problem of the time. The act authorized the negotiation of treaties with Native American tribes for their removal to the Indian Territory, which is now Oklahoma. The federal government was responsible for providing transportation, food, and supplies to the Native American tribes during their journey to the Indian Territory. However, many tribes were forcibly removed from their homes, and the journey to the Indian Territory, known as the Trail of Tears, was marked by suffering, by disease, and of course death. The Indian Removal Act affected many Native American tribes, including the Cherokee, the Creek, the Muskogee, Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Seminole. The Cherokee Nation fought the removal in court, and y'all, they won. They won in the case of Worcester versus Georgia in 1832. Okay, so this is 2 years after, which recognized their sovereignty and the right to self-government. However, President Jackson refused to enforce this decision and continued on with the removal. And he did it with such a joyful attitude, pretty sick human. As I researched, I found the original Removal Act, written by President Andrew Jackson, this slaver, this ethnic cleanser, and all-around tyrant. He negotiated over 70 removal treaties. Also, the cause of this mass destruction from this human, this President Jackson, he launched the great wipeout of the American bison. Numbers 2 million bison a year. American, and just recently in the past decade, we've claimed this animal as our nation's animal. You know, we have the bald eagle, but the mammal it is the American bison. But Jackson used to use this quote, kill every buffalo you can. Every buffalo dead is an Indian gone. The American bison, of course, was with its slaughter it put our Native American peoples into starvation. They counted on this particular animal more than any other animal, especially in this region, and they did not want to help out our Native people. So I read through and engaged with the Treaty of the New Echota. I had to research how to say Echota. And the Treaty of New Echota, which in Cherokee, Echota means rising from the ashes. So it's a treaty that's using a Cherokee word that actually means rises from the ashes, and we won't talk about who lit the fire, but the Echota was the name of their Cherokee capital. The Treaty of the New Echota gave the Cherokees $5 million and land in the present-day Oklahoma in exchange for their 7 million acres of ancestral land. Though the majority of Cherokees opposed the treaty, we're talking 4 out of 5, the principal chief, John Ross, wrote a letter to Congress protesting it and said, no, we don't want this. The U.S. Senate ratified the document in March of 1836. The truths are harsh from what happened from that one faulty, false lie that they did agree to. They didn't agree. This was a complete lie. And so the fact is that 4,000 of the 15,000 indigenous removed in this particular treaty, they died of starvation. They died of exposure and sickness. And we might infer they died of other reasons. I chose the document written and delivered by Major General Winfield Scott's Order Number 25, headed Headquarters, Eastern Division Cherokee Agency, May 17th, 1838. This is regarding the removal of the Cherokee Indians to the west. So these are the orders. And so when orders, of course you guys know this, but when orders are read, they're read to everyone, every soldier, every part, no matter major, general, doesn't matter. Everyone hears these orders and they must abide by them. Well, that was the hope. So I did attach to the email this actual primary source. And what I've done is I've taken little pieces and excerpts and I've given my view upon those. Some are opinions, some are connections, some are based on our essential questions, some of the buzz that we like to look for, and so much social control. And I will use the word cringy because it seems to be my word this semester. There are moments here that there's such hypocrisy in just from one document. And so we're going to jump into it. So here are a few excerpts, quotes, connections, thoughts, and notes about this document. The theme here is hypocrisy and strange, encouraging language that makes reading this uncomfortable. And knowing how this fell into history, so now where we are looking at what fell into history, I felt enraged in the lies that were carefully embedded into this notice. All right. So, and I would say if you want to just read something, it's a quick read, but it will make you kind of turn your head and go, ooh, this is not what happened. All right, so as we're talking about Major General Winfield Scott, it's my auntie's name, and so this is his piece that he wrote. His staff was made up of colonels, majors, and generals, and the medical director of the Army. The territories were broken into 3 districts in the South, of course, Eastern, Western, and Middle. His promise was to, quote, carry out the object with the least possible distress to those who would be removed. They would hold to their districts until, quote, actual or apprehended hostilities will be afforded adequate protection to our white people in and around Cherokee country. So as long as they played fair and assimilated and just were quiet little friends, then they were fine. They were fine. But of course, when you have 4/5 of this nation saying, no, we didn't want this, chances are they're gonna have a collision. In the notice, it was shared, quote, the Cherokees, by the advancements which they have made in Christianity and to be civilized, are by far the most interesting tribe of Indians in all the territories. Now, this was written in the middle of the notice. It's like this strange compliment in the middle, but it absolutely echoes that social control, the pieces of social control. As long as you're Christian, as long as you assimilate and play by the rules, and being civilized. Now, this is early 1800s. A civil war hasn't happened yet, and they're indigenous people that own the land, and they're being done wrong. Out of the 15,000 people to be removed, 4/5 of them opposed it. It goes further on to share in this document that they would have shared among all recruits and the soldiers this message. None, meaning the Cherokees, are in actual hostilities with the U.S. or threaten a resistance by arms. Yet the troops will probably be obliged, I love this word, probably be obliged to cover the whole country they inhabit in order to make prisoners and to march or to transport the prisoners by families to be delivered to the superintendent of the Cherokee immigration. This quote hit me different. Every possible kindness, now this is in the notice, it states, every possible kindness compatible with the necessity of removal, must therefore be shown by the troops. And if in the ranks a despicable individual should be found capable of inflicting a wanton injury or an insult on any Cherokee man, woman, or child, it is hereby made the special duty of the nearest good officer or man instantly to interpose and to seize and consign the guilty wretch to the severest penalties of the laws. One word: hypocrisy. The lack of the respect for human life that was displayed in these movements in the movements of the tribes was hidden from what they communicated to the public. What a falsehood. And then it was written as if we were doing them a favor, moving them to a new great space, like a vacation land. And as for the final statement, they would have been punished by the severest laws. Well, who wrote the laws? Who controls the laws? Who enforces the laws? And were they ever prosecuted for their atrocities? And we do know the atrocities have been shared. Next quote: every captured man, as well as all who surrender themselves, must be disarmed, with the assurance that their weapons will be carefully preserved and restored at or beyond the Mississippi. So we're going to take your guns, we're going to hold them for you. In either case, the men will be guarded and escorted, except it may be where their children and women are safely secured as hostages. Language. But in general, families in our possession will not be separated, well, unless it be to send men as runners to invite others to come in. Such language. The great invitation. I am certain no threaten to man. Corn, oats, fodder, and other forage, also beef cattle belonging to the Indians, will be removed. And it will be taken possession of and by the proper departments of the staff as wanted for the regular consumption of the Army. So the Army's going to take all your stuff, all of your animals, all of your forage, your vegetables, your food, your supplies. Oh, but wait. And certificates given to the owners specifying in every case the amount of forage and the weight of beef so taken, in order that the owners must be paid for the same on their arrival at one of the depots mentioned above. IOUs that are still IOU'd. This was an empty promise of repayment. The prisoners were allowed to bring such things they could carry. It was shared in the document, quote, such and all other light articles of property the Indians will be allowed to collect and to take with them, as also their slaves, who will be treated in like manner with the Indians themselves. This brings to light that yes, the Cherokees did own enslaved people. And there were many soldiers of multiracial couples that had biracial children. I'll have you pay attention to that last one. Who will be treated in like manner with the Indians themselves. Enslaved people, the Indians, the Native Americans that are being escorted, quote, quote, are going to be treated enslaved. They just told on themselves. And finally, I'll finish this with white men and widows, citizens of the United States, who are or who've been intermarried with Indians, and thence commonly themed Indian countrymen, so you gotta call them a name. Also such Indians as have been made denizens of particular states by special legislations, together with the families and property of all such persons, will not be molested or removed by the troops until the decision on the principles involved can be obtained from the War Department. Protections to those who were assimilated into that status quo of the white nation. Protection for those, the countrymen, the Indian countrymen, had to have a name for them, that have interracial families, that the citizen, of whom they're calling citizen of this country, they and their families are safe as long as the War Department says they're good. I think they just told on themselves, though. They used a couple words here. They used the words, will not be molested or removed by the troops. By using the word molested, different maybe meaning than we might use today, but really, yeah, they're going to be messed with. They're going to be taken advantage of, but they're not going to be messed with like we're messing with all of the other indigenous peoples. So after researching this document, I'll tell you, I find myself with more questions than answers. And yes, of course, I'm going to keep digging. Thank you for your time, your 15 minutes, oh goodness, and have a great class.